Hello, everybody. Before I start, I just want to take the pulse. What's the emotion in the room right now? Excited. Excited. I'm glad to hear that. Anything else? Sorry? Anticipation. Ooh.
Closer.
What else? Curiosity. Great. Thank you for sharing your emotions. So, my name is Natalie. I'm not going to introduce myself just yet. I have a little question for you, first of all. So I want you to look at these ladies here, and I want you to tell me, what do they have in common?
They're all badass.
They're all badass. I like that answer. I wasn't expecting that answer, but I like it. Anything else? Apart from being American, anything else? Power, famous. Success. Confident. Yes. I love the way that you describe these women. Let me just tell you a story about these women. We're going to start with Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah Winfrey, in a candid interview, revealed that the producers of her talk show told her that she expressed too much and that she was over-emotional. Kamala Harris was attacked by her opponents and described as hysterical when she was asking some very pointed and challenging questions to the Attorney General. And Kamala Harris, back when she was presidential candidate, was labeled as unhinged, and the media often questioned her likability and her temperament. So these brilliant, powerful, successful women that we can see up there, despite all of that, very quickly had their legitimacy and their credibility touched upon simply because of their emotions. And so we're going to come back to these ladies later on, but I just want you to think about that, how quickly emotions can be used as a tool against somebody, which is such a shame. So, a little bit about me. I'm the CEO of Human Force, and the mission at Human Force is to move from a workforce to a human force. So it's really about building cultures of belonging, cultures of care, and cultures of recognition, where we put the human being in the workplace at the center of success. And you can see that I've done lots of different things. I've been a manager in private companies. I've done all sorts of things. But today I specialize in emotional intelligence, leadership, coaching and development, and also health and well-being at work. I have 2 children, and I've put my daughter there in the middle. And the reason why I put my daughter there is because my daughter is autistic. And I think that for her, being on the spectrum, working with her emotions and identifying and labeling her emotions are particularly difficult. So it's been quite a journey for her. And I think, if anything, her journey has inspired me to be where I am today. And the last thing, of course, is my book. You're going to get fed up about hearing about my book. But anyway, it's there. It came out in April. I'm very proud of it. And it's really why I'm here today, to talk to you about a subject that means so much to me. So, what do we think about emotions? Are they the elephant in the room? What do we think? Do they have a place at work? What can we say? What can't we say? How much is too much? I was labeled by my mother when I was a child as highly strung. She was very concerned about me and concerned about me being over-emotional. And I'm telling you the truth here, when she took me to the doctor, and she asked the doctor if he could give me some medication to calm me down. I think I must have been about 5 or 6 at the time. Thankfully, the doctor just told my mother that I would grow out of it. And I don't know if I did grow out of it. You'd have to ask people who know me today. But later on, as I began my career, my first career, I was a commercial lawyer working in the City of London. I felt very disconnected to my job, and I felt quite unhappy in the legal industry. I felt that we weren't allowed to talk about our emotions, that it was quite a sterile environment for me. And I think throughout my career, I was always looking for that emotional connection, which wasn't always there. And of course, when we talk about emotions, we know if we go back centuries and centuries ago, emotions have always had a bad press. It's always been the rational, the logic, the cognitive side, which has been thought to be more important. And emotions have been perceived sometimes as a weakness. At workplace, perhaps they interfere with performance and productivity. I have to say that during COVID, perhaps for the first time, I saw emotions really at the forefront in most workplaces. I spent a lot of my time supporting managers and teams as they navigated the complex emotions of their teams during this difficult time. And what's happened since then? Well, I think there is some progress. I think in some of the more traditional industries, like perhaps the finance industries, banking, legal, I think there still is a difficulty in that area. People are still reluctant to talk about emotions at work. But I do think that it's getting better. But there is work to do. And let me just share with you this survey that was done back in 2020. It's a UK survey. It was done with a large group of people. And they were asked the question, do you think emotions belong at work? 30% consider expressing emotions is a weakness. 59% say that they have emotions they suppress at work. And 1 in 3 UK workers conceal their true emotions. Now, I don't know what you think about that, but I think that's quite shocking. And when I was writing my book, I did a lot of research, and it's true that there are other countries where such surveys have been done, and we're looking at some similar results. Much depends on the culture, obviously. Different cultures have different expectations around emotions, but certainly around where we live in Europe and in sort of our world, this is very much the statistic that is relevant, I think. So there is a lot to do. Now, I'm a fanatic about emotions. I think they're super important. I think they're really valuable. But I want to ask you now, in what situations at work are emotions valuable? Think of when you're going to work on a day-to-day basis. When do you think emotions can be valuable? I'm going to throw that question open to the audience. Yes? When you talk to or speak with clients, absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
I would say all of them, because they affect how we feel at work.
Absolutely. So many situations. We're going to see in a minute how what you're saying is absolutely right. Yes?
So I'm biased because I'm in HR, but I think definitely in terminations, reorgs, anything that is, having a significant impact on the person.
Yes, you're right. Particularly reorgs and that sort of thing, absolutely. Anyone else? Yes, over there.
I think on an everyday basis, because if we don't share emotions, then we don't connect really to the people. It's hard to connect to the people we work with.
Yes, yes. Connection is really important. Anything else?
I think it's less about emotions per se. It's more about how you express them.
It's less about emotions, it's more about how you express them. Okay, that's interesting.
Emotions are valid. Just how you express them.
Great, interesting. We'll come back to that. Anybody else? Yes? Decision making. Yeah, you're right. Do we make a decision just with our head, or do we also make a decision with our heart? We talk about that gut instinct, don't we? To make well-rounded decisions, we need to have our head and our heart together. Yes. Anybody else? Yes. They're all valuable. One last one.
I think during negotiations, and
Yeah.
for example, also process improvement,
Yeah.
change behavior,
Yeah.
emotions play a significant role in that.
Yeah. Great. So you're coming up with some really good things. I'm just going to share a few with you, and this is not an exhaustive list. When we learn at work, it's really hard to learn, to use your memory, your concentration, your focus if you're emotionally overwhelmed. Or it's particularly hard to learn if you're in an environment that isn't safe. We talk a lot about innovation today. Well, guess what? Emotions are involved in creativity and innovating. When we are using our emotions, a full set of our emotions, we're able to see things from different perspectives. and also maybe think out of the box as well. And of course, if we're in a constant state of fear at work, if we don't feel safe, then it's really hard as well to innovate. Decision making, we talked about that earlier on. Motivation, emotion and motivation are linked. You can see how those two words come together. When we are passionate, when we are excited, it's a driving force to become motivated and engaged. Health and well-being. We know that when we don't work with our emotions, when our emotions are not dealt with, or when they are suppressed, when we can't be ourselves, it can affect our health and well-being. I'm sure that many of you have experienced that before. Not everybody makes the dots, actually. Not everybody connects the dots and realizes, but actually, emotions are extremely relevant to our health and well-being. Relationships, we talked about that. Somebody in the audience mentioned that earlier. Inclusion. We talk so much about diversity. We talk so much about inclusion. How can we have an inclusive workplace if we're not allowed to bring our emotions to work, if we can't be our authentic selves? Feedback. Feedback in difficult conversations. I'm going to put that into one box because it's all around performance management. The number of clients that I have who shy away from giving feedback or shy away from those difficult conversations, perhaps it's constructive feedback for underperformance, or perhaps it's a conflictual situation, or perhaps it's a conversation, a caring conversation that they need to have with their people. Many people don't like that because they're worried. They're worried about the emotions that are going to be involved. And if we work with emotions and if we get comfortable with emotions, then those conversations become a lot less daunting. And change management. We talked about reorganizations, that sort of thing, but change management. The biggest problem around change management, the reason why so many of these initiatives fail is because of resistance to change, because people are frightened about the change. And when managers can work with that fear, not be frightened of that fear, and know how to talk to their people in the right way, then their people can become change agents rather than change victims. So whether we're talking about talent management, performance management, diversity and inclusion, health and well-being, leadership development, emotions are everywhere. And so I don't think I need to preach to the converted. I know that many of you in this room clearly are understanding that. So you might say to me, are all emotions valuable? So this is a question that I get asked a lot. People say to me, yeah, I know emotions are important, but actually, you can't just come to work and be sad, and you can't just come to work and be angry. There's got to be some kind of limit there. People don't want sad people at work. They don't want angry people at work. So we're all pretty happy talking about excitement or joy or passion. We like those emotions, but what I've often seen is that the shutters go up for anything that is unpleasant. Fear, anger, sadness. A lot of people, they don't like the feeling that those emotions give. They make you feel unpleasant. And I think the labeling here is very important. You've probably often read about emotions, and maybe you've heard the term positive and negative emotions. I don't think that's helpful, because I think that doesn't embrace the fact that all emotions are valuable. So I prefer to call them unpleasant and pleasant, or energy giving and energy draining. All emotions are valuable. The word emotion comes from the Latin ex movere, which means to move. So the emotions are there to make us move. They have a message to tell us, and that's why they're all important. So just to talk about this, let's think about the emotion of anger. What could be the important message that anger has? What's the need that it expresses? Why is it so valuable, anger? Yes. Sorry? Fear. Yes. There's an unmet need, possibly. Yes. A boundary was crossed. Yes. Yes. Energetic. It can be energetic. It can be energetic, absolutely. Anger can make you energetic, that's for sure. Yes. A change is needed. I like that. Yes. Yes. Could be misaligned expectations. Yes. So what we commonly know is that anger is usually there because when you get angry, it's usually because something is not fair to you, or a boundary has been crossed, and you need to ask for repair. You need to set things straight. You need to take action for repair. So, when you see people marching in the streets, protesting about something, they're putting their anger to good use. That anger is motivating them to ask for a change. So anger can be very valuable. What about fear? What could be the value of fear? Why is fear important? I mean, it is pretty unpleasant when you're feeling it, but what's important about it? Yes? Announces danger. That's right. Self-preservation, absolutely. It's danger. It announces danger. It tells us that we need to protect ourselves, that we need to find a safe space and reassure ourselves. And this last one, this emotion, sadness, this is the one emotion, in my experience, that a lot of people struggle with. We're not allowed to be sad. But why is sadness so important? Disappointment. Why do we need to be sad? Yes. We need to let go. You're completely right. Sadness is important. It tells you that you've lost something. It tells you that you need to accept and you need to let go. And when you accept and when you let go, then you can move on. So you're probably listening to me thinking, is she telling me that I can be angry, fearful, and sad at work? Is that going to work? Is that real? And I'm going to say to you, sometimes yes, and sometimes no. Because when you learn to work with your emotions, you learn to realize when they're valuable and when they're not perhaps valuable for you in that moment. You learn to dial them up, or you learn to dial them down. And I work with a lot of clients where we practice emotional agility. We become familiar with our emotions, and we know in the moment whether or not they're useful or whether we need to just put them to the side for the moment if they're preventing us from doing what we need to do. So emotions are valuable, but there's always a time and a place, of course. So the last thing I want to talk to you about emotions is that since the pandemic, and probably it was even starting before the pandemic, but since the pandemic, there's been a real epidemic of loneliness. If you do your research and you read about it, you will know that more than ever, people are lonely. In fact, last year there was a survey in the US where it said that, I think it was 36% of the participants of the survey said that they feel lonely most of the time. And this, of course, is due to a number of factors. The world of work is changing. We're working remotely. We have more single-parent families. There's so many reasons. But it's so important that employers work on building a sense of belonging and a sense of connection. The younger generation today, they want workplaces that are inclusive. They want workplaces that are healthy. They want workplaces that are diverse. But they also really want an emotional connection. And they really want to feel that they belong and that they have a sense of community. And when we embrace emotions and we work with emotions in the right way, then we can really have an impact on the people that work with us. So I think that's so important. So I've talked a little bit about the value of emotions, and there's a lot more that I could say, but I want to now move to the second part of the talk today, and to think a little bit about how that power of emotion can so quickly be taken away. I've been called touchy. I've been called aggressive. I've been called a number of things. And similar to the three ladies that you saw at the beginning of this talk, so many women are still being labeled in an unfortunate way sometimes at work. And it's a real shame. And you might say to yourself, where does this come from? Is it a question of biology, for example? Well, there's been a lot of research and a lot of statistics around this. And the conclusion at the moment is no. There is no real evidence to say that it's because of biology, that's because a man's body or a woman's body, they're different to each other. Absolutely not. There is no evidence at all. And I wanted to share with you a really interesting thing too is that when women are asked a question, there's been a number of surveys where women are asked the question, are women more emotional than men? Most of the women say yes. And the men agree. So even the women believe this, okay? This has become something that we believe. Thankfully, there are lots of things now, lots of research being done. Here's an interesting one. The University of Michigan carried out a really interesting experiment a couple of years ago where they monitored a group of men and women across 70 days. And they monitored them across 70 days so that all the hormonal cycles would be included. They were monitored on a moment-to-moment, day-to-day basis. And at the end of the experiment, what they found is that men's emotions were fluctuating as much as women's emotions. And they also found that the intensity of the emotions were the same for men and for women. Men, another survey, this was back in 2020, men are twice as likely to get emotional when their ideas are not heard or criticized and are more likely to quit a job because of their emotions. So I'm not having a vendetta here against men, I hope you don't think that. But it's just to show that men are emotional too. Men are emotional too. Men and women are emotional. It's a fact. And the real reason why we have this belief that women are more emotional than men is because it's been ingrained into us. It's been ingrained into our societal norms and our cultures. We grow up being told certain things, and we end up believing it. Just like my mother told me that I was highly strung and might need medication, we grow up believing these things. We have what's called display rules. I don't know if you've heard of display rules. These are things like for the men, for the display rules for men are big boys don't cry, right? Or perhaps your workplace has an unwritten rule that's perhaps, I don't know, we don't do sad here, for example. We don't do sad here. We have these display rules and we grow up and we believe them. They become part of our norm. And so that's where the difficulty really lies. Now, I want to talk to you about the double bind. Now, there is a double bind here, and a double bind exists both for men and for women, okay? Men, too, have their challenges with regards to double bind. They also have to conform to a certain belief or certain expected behavior. But the double bind for women is more impactful because it does impact, and research is showing it does impact career progression and the breakthrough of the glass ceiling. Women's career progression can be impacted by this. And what is the double bind? Well, the double bind is a mismatch between it's between the behaviors that are expected of a leader, traditional, I have to put in quotes, traditional leader, and the behaviors that are expected of a woman. And when women do not conform to those expected behaviors, then there can be consequences and they can be reprimanded for that. Well, I'm sure you probably know, that most women are portrayed or have been thought of in the past as kind, as gentle, as empathetic, demure, caring. These have often been the terms that we associate with women. And when they get to a certain position in companies, what we find when they start to demonstrate the traditional leadership attributes, which might be authority, assertiveness, decisiveness, then they might be criticized. And we've often seen this, criticized as being unfeminine, criticized as being aggressive, hysterical, whatever. And that's a really tricky thing for a woman to navigate, because the women are constantly monitoring what's happening in their culture. They're having to alter their behavior when necessary. And so this can be actually quite costly to them. I don't know if you've heard of the term emotional labor. Perhaps you have. When women are constantly having to alter and adjust and wonder and think, am I doing this right? What's going to happen? It's quite damaging to health as well and to mental health. So it's a difficult situation. And it's really hard to break through the glass ceiling when you don't feel respected or when you're being judged on your emotional behavior. So there's something that's really important to work with here. So there's a double bind. And as I said, it's all about power, and women's power can be so easily taken away. And I want to just share with you one last thing around emotions and power. A recent experiment, sort of research done only last year, basically what happened here is they put together a man and a woman who were having a disagreement. And participants were encouraged to watch the disagreement. And during the disagreement, the woman was told to calm down, and she was told to not be so emotional. Okay? And during the disagreement, at another point, the man was told to calm down and not be so emotional. Well, guess what? The participants who watched this disagreement, when the woman was told to calm down and not be emotional, they rated her argument as less legitimate. The legitimacy of the man's argument was not at all impacted when he was told to calm down or be less emotional. So really, the way in which we talk, the behaviors and the attitudes and our expectations really have an impact on all of this. So what do we do about it? I mean, it's not all doom and gloom. That's why we're here today, I think. And I think everybody in the room probably would like to do something about it, and we can do something about it. There are strategies that we can put in place to work with this, absolutely. So I'm going to just ask you now for some ideas, and I'm sure there are people in the room who are already doing this, but as a leader first, as a leader, what are some of the things that you can do? What are some of the things that you can do to break down those stereotypes and those myths? Educate, brilliant. Educate, yes, thank you. Show your emotions. As a leader, you can be a role model, right? You can talk about emotions, you can provide a safe space for emotion, and you can, on occasion, be vulnerable. So definitely. Anything else? Give space to emotions. Absolutely. Yes. Lots of hands going up. Great. Yes?
Call people on their biases.
Call out people when they're... Exactly. When you see behavior, when you see people stereotyping, call it out. Challenge it. Yes? Suspend judgment. Thank you. Yes?
There might be some research about political connections between women in organizations. Does women do more or less politics to each other to survive as a group of women? But I think
Okay.
more like diplomatic political, but a group of women and act if they see unjust.
Yeah. I mean, the key is that women really do need to support each other. And what going to that point, what about as individuals? Forget the leader bit. What can we do as men and as women to support each other? Because although I've really focused on women today, and I have done because I had to pick a side, I think, but men do also have their own issues, and what they can be at work and how they can be at work is not always easy at all. So what is it that men and women can do?
It's cultural, right? With men, you not show emotion, but women, it's normal.
That's right, it's cultural.
So I think it's cultural, so to promote teaching them,
Yes?
even if you're male,
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
by a man crying is really
Yeah.
negative.
Absolutely. One more comment, then I'm going to... Yes?
Less labeling emotions. So not like welcoming the positive ones and discriminating the negative ones.
Yeah.
Less labeling and just
Welcoming all of them. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So these are just a few suggestions, and I'm sure it's not a non-exhaustive list, but I'm sure that you will come up with some other ones. And you can see, I won't go through all of them, but you can see that there are so many things that leaders can do and that employees can do. And you can see there at the bottom, why not implement policies that prohibit discrimination on the basis of emotional expression? Train and raise awareness, have inclusive open discussions, call it out when you see it. And we all need to be thinking about our own biases and our own language and the behavior that we have with regards to emotions, because all of us probably have a bit of thinking to do and constant reflection about what this means. And why not speak out about your experiences and challenge where possible? I know we're going to hear from the panel in a minute. A lot of senior leaders are also stepping up. If you don't challenge it, then it's very difficult to do anything about it. So just before I close, I want to just give you a little heads up here. If any of you are interested, I'm doing a masterclass. It's called Leveraging the Power of Your Emotions. It's one of the first steps in working with your emotions. And I'll be happy to talk to you about that afterwards. But I want to impact as many people as possible. So please do come and talk to me about that if you're interested. And so we've talked about a lot of things today. I really hope for a future where men and women can come to work and they don't have to conform to stereotypes about their emotions. They can bring their authentic selves to work. I've got a call to action, and I hope this resonates with you. Let's embrace emotions. Let's provide a safe space for emotions. Let's challenge ourselves and challenge each other. Let's send a clear message that emotions are valuable and a foundation for success. And lastly, if anybody comes up to you and says, you are too emotional, maybe you can do what I do now. I say, thank you. I say, emotions are my superpower. What's your superpower?